That's how you look like.
Hello, and welcome back. Christine E. Schultz here, your favorite Elvish author, and of course, as always, the fantabulous Isaac.
Still fantabulous.
And welcome back to another chapter reaction, where we read the first chapters of books to you to help you discover something new that you might want to read, and quite often to help us discover something new to read as well. However, today we will be continuing with reading my fan fiction, Demon Queen, which of course I have read since I am the author thereof, but this is still new to him.
Have
Right?
you actually read it? Does writing count as reading?
I've also read it, because then you have to read it multiple times in order to edit it, so. Anyway, so today we'll be starting chapter 5. Can you tell people what happened last time?
They went to the spirit temple,
Yes?
and not much happened at the spirit temple. They just figured out that they couldn't do anything at the spirit temple.
Well, they did find where the portal should be for Ghirahim to summon his armies of demons and monsters, but yes, they were not able to open the portal.
Yeah.
And Kome was basically just like, well, haha, I brought you here to show you that, you know, I can't actually help you. Because she's not really about Ghirahim yet, you know?
No.
And then what happened after that?
Ghirahim came back. He was quite frustrated. I believe did some puzzles and some fighting.
Yeah?
And then went back to his room, and he had a nice conversation with Sakura.
Yep. Sakura, although I call her Sakura, but you're
Yeah,
probably...
I'm not sure which way is
I think that his is the right pronunciation, but hey, it's my book, so I guess I will pronounce her name the way that I've been pronouncing her name.
It's your way.
So yeah, he had a conversation with Sakura. She seems intent on helping him figure out how to open this portal. We're not really sure why. She doesn't currently seem to have any ulterior motives or any agenda of her own, but maybe she's just really clever too. Maybe she's more clever than Ghirahim. Who knows?
Maybe.
Maybe remains to be seen.
And I'm calling it now. I think she's the demon queen.
Oh yeah, so he thinks Sakura will end up being the Demon Queen as seen on the title of the book. So, but all that again remains to be seen. So let's play chapter 5, shall we?
Okay.
All right, strap on your elf ears and get ready to listen to chapter 5. Ghirahim sprang up as the knock persisted. He had used a charm to secure the door in hopes that he might be afforded a few hours of rest. Sleep had finally found him, but with it, a host of nightmares. As the thunder that had assailed the storm in his dreams was mirrored in the knocking on his door, he sprang up with a growl, walked over, undid the charm, and threw the door open wide. "Kataki," he snarled, "what in the God's name are you doing making such a racket out there? Surely, if a demon locks his door, he intends for it to remain that way." "Forgive me, my lord." Kataki slinked past him into his room. He glared, taken aback for a moment by her boldness, or stupidity, whichever was the case, but then shut the door, certain he would get no further sleep whether he kept her or sent her away. "Forgive me, but I could not rest. I was so excited by our adventure today." She fell back on his bed, sweeping her arms across the silken sheets like one making fairy shapes in the snow. Then, propping herself up on one side, she grinned lazily at him and said, "Come here, my lord. You look anxious. Let me comfort you." Yeah, remember this is 50 Shades of Ghirahim. He hates when I call it that, but,
I do.
you know, there are improper intimacies going on between Ghirahim and Kataki, so.
Improper.
"I would not look half as anxious had you not woken me in the middle of the night," Ghirahim said. "Though, I suppose the damage being done, I may as well let you fix it." He lay back in the bed with her. Kataki curled up close to him, nuzzling her head against his arm until he relented and let her lay her head on his chest. "What a day." She sighed deeply and began tracing her icy patterns across his chest. The burn irritated him more than exciting him. "The magic of that place. It charged me with such an incredible energy. I know you felt it too. Can still feel it. I know it's part of what has you so on edge. It's been ages since Kome allowed me to access the temple. I can clear the first trial on my own, but without her, the sandstorm is impossible yet for me to navigate. It gives me such a thrill to be able to use my powers, especially to show you, my lord, what I am capable of. I hope I do not disappoint you. I hope you see my worth and value to you as your most loyal servant, and, perhaps someday, your most loyal queen." Ghirahim arched a brow. Queen. He had to admire her ambition, even if her presumption was ever an embarrassment to her. Well, it's just, I've been thinking. If you were to take the Hyrule throne and, say, become king, you would require an heir. Ghirahim scoffed. Whatever for? Demons are immortal. By mortal standards, yes. They do not fall by illness or age, but there are ways in which a demon may be destroyed. My sister and I, we have not studied broadly on the subject, but we have studied enough to know that there is a way to destroy any creature. Even the most powerful has some weak point. Even a great and powerful lord such as yourself would want an heir to protect your line and kingdom. What is your point in all this talk of heirs? Ghirahim asked, though he saw through her game more plainly than one sees the bottom of a clear lake, down to every last piece of rubble, every grain of sand. What would you suggest? Kataki turned over onto her belly and looked up into his face. The usual lust lingered in her gaze, but this time it was different, softer in a way. For the longest time now, I have had a great yearning to bear a child. After all, is that not the greatest gift and consolation and power a woman can wield in this world? Komi is so particular with her lovers and would have me be the same. I feel as though she will never marry or produce any children, nor so much as even know a man's touch. She is a virgin, then? Kataki frowned a little at his intrigue, but said, Yes, at least, I am almost certain. Ghirahim smirked. Could explain why she's wound so tight all the time. Yes, well, anyway, were you to become king, and seeing as how we are already lovers, I would be pleased to give you an heir, whether you saw fit to take me as your queen or not. Should you not rather be supporting your sister, encouraging her to take the throne rather than myself? I am surprised that you should set your sights on someone you've just met and help their interests rather than your own flesh and blood. Such is usually the way with mortals, as far as I have seen. They serve their families, even to the death, no matter how that flesh and blood may have treated or mistreated them. Kataki pouted. I love my sister, but she has ever belittled my magical abilities. I do not feel as though she has faith in me. I do not feel that she would utilize my powers to the fullest, as I trust you to do. She does not even train me in certain magics because she feels a need to protect me from them. Me! Protect me! Her twin and thus her equal in every way. Truth be told, I do not even believe she has faith in your plan. I think she showed you the portal simply to appease you, knowing full well that its gates were closed. But her fingers danced along his chest. The icy sparks set his body on edge. You and I, together, we could show her. We could become great together, and show her just how much she has underestimated us both. If, of course, you saw fit to take me as your queen and bear an heir with me. Her fingers trailed down to his chest, danced on his stomach for a moment, and then slipped beneath his trousers. Ghirahim released a deep sigh that soon transformed into a growl as she touched him. His passions unleashed, he grabbed her, threw himself on top of her, and took her. After a while, when Kataki's passions were obviously spent, Ghirahim showed mercy and let her rest. Lust still ripped through him. He seemed more hard-pressed than usual to be satiated. His thirst was never fully quenched, but tonight he felt as though he had been granted not a single drop of relief. Perhaps because another's face had lit his imagination, as he had used the pathetic wench who cuddled close to him now. Then again, since when had he ever been given over to sentimentality? Why should it matter who satisfied his desires? Of course, therein lay the problem. He was no mortal man, easily pleased by a mere romp. He needed a challenge, especially a mental one. The matter of the portal would suffice, but how even to begin unraveling its secrets when none seemed to exist who could crack the ancient runes? My lord seems distracted, Kataki said, tracing her frosty patterns across his chest once more. Ghirahim shifted, hoping she would get the hint. Her sweat-drenched body, pressed close to his, disgusted him tonight. Just irritated, Ghirahim muttered. Disappointed, frustrated, even outraged might describe it. He shifted again. She drew only closer still, and he had to refrain from slapping her away. Not that he didn't have any right, but he had yet needed her good graces. He already teetered on the edge of grace in terms of her overprotective sister, so it was best not to burn his bridges just yet. About the portal, Kataki said, the mystery of the runes. Yes? I might have a secret that would help. Ghirahim pushed her away this time, just enough so that he could glare down at her. What secret? And why did you not speak of this before? I have already given my lord a great secret. She took his hand, pressed it beneath her thighs. I would be pleased to share with him another, but perhaps after he has divulged a secret of his own. Ghirahim opened his mouth to reprimand her. The sheer insolence, demanding anything from him. Him, a great demon who would soon be lord over all Hyrule. But he was not lord yet, and he must use her to attain that title. Very well, he said. I will tell you a secret. Do you know the tales they tell about the hero, and the sage, and the great demon king. I have heard the Gerudo telling such tales, sometimes to each other, sometimes to their children at bedtime. Kataki nodded. Yes, my lord. My life and power are so ancient that I was there to witness that tale unfold. The hero, the sage, the demon king, I saw them, met them, spoke with them. It may be hundreds of years past, but I remember that time as though it were a moment that passed just yesterday. Kataki's eyes widened. Is this true? The great hero of legend? And you were there for it all? Ghirahim nodded. How? What were they like? The battle between the hero and the demon king. Surely that must have been quite the spectacle to behold. Pain rippled through Ghirahim as he remembered being imprisoned inside Demise's blade, forced to feel the Master Sword's magic clash with his, blow after blow after blow. Yes, Ghirahim muttered, it was quite the sight. What of the sage? Was she as beautiful as the legends say? Her music as enchanting? I have told you my secret, Ghirahim said. No more questions. And you must swear to me not to breathe a word of my secret to a single soul, not even your sister. It would alarm her to know how ancient my magic runs. Despite my promises to aid the two of you as your most humble equal, I do not think she trusts me. She will trust you less still if you accept the secret I have for you, Kataki said. Hence she will trust me less, should she discover I granted it to you. But I think it may be for the good of your plan. Tell me, Ghirahim demanded, squeezing her thigh tightly. She moaned, and then whimpered as he squeezed tighter still. On your life, tell me the secret. I will show you instead, she whispered, her voice shaking. She grabbed his hand, moved it further up her thigh. He snatched her wrist. No, no more until you show me. If your secret is worth the trouble, I will reward you. But until then, no more. Kataki's face fell. Then, with a smile, she said, Follow me, my lord. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. Ghirahim and Kataki dressed, and she led him from the fortress into the crisp night air. Stars shone brilliantly in the clear sky. They seemed to dance and sparkle a little bit more boldly than usual, and Ghirahim took it as a good omen. Tonight, he would finally taste sweet success for his mission. Kataki led him to the entrance of the training grounds. A guard stood aside, bowing to both her mistress and the demon lord, all the while glancing curiously between each of them. Kataki winked, and a smirk tugged at the corners of her lips. Lord Ghirahim and I wish to get in some extra training this evening. The guard's eyes lit with mischief. As Kataki and Ghirahim passed through the gates, her gaze followed Ghirahim's every step with envy. Inside the fortress, Kataki led Ghirahim through the leftmost of the 3 doorways situated within the great lion head statues. With a flick of her wrist, she turned the Stalfos and Dinos monsters who assailed them into solid ice. The next room housed a maze, with great round stones rolling about. One had to either dodge them or be crushed flat by them. Of course, magical charms shrouded the grounds so that a trainee could not truly die, merely fail, and be sent back to the beginning to start anew. Kataki leapt lively around the rolling stones, sometimes balancing on top of them. Ghirahim soared right over with his unmatched grace and speed. At one end of the room, the stones rolled away into a huge fissure rent in the stone floor. Its jagged edges made it look like a giant Goron had literally stretched and ripped the floor apart with his bare hands. Down there, Kataki said. We must jump down there. Ghirahim said nothing, only watched as the next series of stones hurled toward the abyss and then disappeared into its black depths. As soon as they had passed, he jumped in, and Kataki followed. Darkness swallowed them. Ghirahim slowed his freefall, still floating down swiftly, but not so fast that he would take damage upon touching the bottom. An age seemed to drift by. Ghirahim could see nothing. His night vision was stifled by some sort of charm. He sensed Kataki, but did not see her. He began to begrudge her, and wonder if Kome had put her up to playing some ill trick on him. Then, at long last, a golden point of light appeared beneath his feet. It grew and grew until it expanded into a great ring of golden-orange glow. The semblance of a room came into focus. A large circular stone room surrounded by bookshelves. The giant rolling stones were nowhere in sight. As their feet touched down, Ghirahim said, That wasn't a bad journey after all. I'm surprised Kome doesn't keep this place more well hidden. It seemed all too easy to drop in here. We had our magic to slow the fall, Kataki said. Besides, who would dare to jump in what seems an endless abyss, especially at the danger of those giant stones following you and crushing you? And as for those who did find a way in, she motioned toward one bookshelf. Several skeletons hunched against it, a few feeble tatters of clothing yet clinging to their bones. They were not so fortunate to find a way out. The only way out is the way in. There are no secret doors here. Were my sister or I to lose control of our magic down here, we too would be as these doomed folk. Ghirahim nodded. He spun slowly, surveying the stone walls lined with flaming torches, the shelves upon shelves of books and stacks of parchment, the table in the room's center also overflowing with parchment. He glanced up, and the room above was indecipherable. A simple, yet clever design. Was it your sister's? Kataki seemed to pout a little. It was both of ours. Kami wanted doors down here. She's always so overly paranoid. But I said with outdoors, our secrets are in less danger. For who could follow us down here that we wouldn't be capable of dispatching? No one, Ghirahim said, aside from a horde of Sheikah, or an overzealous demon lord. As he walked around the table, a glimpse of writing caught his eye. Pulling the parchment closer to him, he glanced across the runes, then looked up at Kataki. These are similar to those on the portal. Do you think Kome is studying them herself? Kataki shook her head. I don't know. I hardly come down here. I only know that she keeps this place from you, knowing that it would aid you. She doesn't trust you and fears what you would be capable of if you unlock the ancient magic stored within these texts. She doesn't say this, but I sense her fear. And how can we be certain that she won't follow us down here? Ghirahim said. She won't. A grin filled Kataki's face. She is not the only one full of clever charms. She's been complaining of not being able to sleep, a common complaint for her. She often comes to me, asks me to make her a tonic. I might have made the new potion extra strong, but not so strong that she will awaken groggy or suspect anything in the morning. Just strong enough to assure that she won't wake up until we want her to. Ghirahim grinned back at her. For once, I am impressed. Good work. And now, as for work, shall we set to? We shall, my lord. Together they began wading through the stacks of parchment and delving through books. Ghirahim sat at the table while Kataki sat on the floor, cross-legged and sifting through parchment after parchment, face filled with deep concentration. For once, Ghirahim felt a sort of camaraderie between them. Do you happen to recall exactly what the runes look like? He asked. Kataki glanced up. Yes, I could draw them for you if you like. That way we will each have a copy, yours on parchment and mine in my memory, so that we both know what we are searching for as we do. She stood and walked over to the table, her feet making soft shuffling noises on the seas of parchment beneath her. She ripped off a blank piece of parchment. Then she took a quill from one of the bottles of ink and began to scribble the runes from memory. Ghirahim watched her with mild interest. She wrote quickly, but with a certain elegance in each stroke. He glanced about the room, which looked as though a whirlwind had swept through. Won't your sister wonder who's been in here? She'll see our work. She'll see this. He placed a hand on the parchment, and she paused, glanced up at him, and guessed our secret easily enough. The mischievous grin once more curled on Kataki's lips and lit her eyes. As I said, I have my fair share of tricks up my sleeve. Besides that, the room itself is charmed. It remembers the state it was in last a person was there. She returned to writing the runes. So, my sister will return to this room as she found it, and I will return to the room as I found it. Same for you. She knows I come here now and then to study, so even should she find anything amiss, I'd be the first to blame. She stood straight and admired her work. There they are. Ghirahim studied the paper. Not only had she written out the runes, she had drawn the entire portal, including its every detail, from the octagonal shape of it to the weathered appearance of the runes. It's so much the same, I feel as though I could dive inside the parchment and be transported there. You've a skill for both memory and art. Thank you, my lord. Though... She came up behind him, wrapped her arms around him, and slid her hands up and down his chest. I should not like to think it is my greatest skill, nor my favorite. She kissed his cheek, his neck, and moved her hand down toward his trousers. Ghirahim slapped her hand away. Not now. Kataki crossed her arms. You said you would reward me. Ghirahim stared at her. I'm entirely uncertain in this moment whether to label you a fool, insane, or just plainly a whore. Clearly, we have work to get done. Kataki stared back, obviously stunned by his words. Too much so to be hurt even, it seemed. Quietly, she returned to her spot on the floor and resumed her search. After a couple more hours' work, they had found nothing, and Kataki announced the coming of dawn, by which time her sister would awaken. Frustrated anew by the lack of discovery, by Kataki's lack of respect or regard for their work, Ghirahim marched quietly back to his chambers. Kataki trailed him, and at his door, reached out to touch his arm. He pulled roughly away and shut the door behind him without a word. With a deep sigh, he glanced at his bed. What sweet comfort its luxurious solitude would afford him. He started forward, but then his glance landed upon the curtain. He pulled it back. Sakura was nowhere in sight. Then, remembering her words, he crept over to the door across from the one leading to his room. He reached out to open it, but his glance caught the shimmer of something golden bright. A small hole was carved in the door. Its jagged edges made Ghirahim wonder if some lord who had owned the room before him had made the hole, desperate to catch a glimpse of the maiden beyond. Ghirahim was not desperate now. He had never had needs for such weak human emotions as desperation, except when his master's plans had lain on the edge of peril. Rather, curiosity struck him. Curiosity, and the hunger that Kataki's presence had not only left unfulfilled, but seemed to stroke anew, creating an even stronger hunger. Ghirahim stooped a little and peered inside the hole. Her room was small. Not as small as the hole in the wall behind the curtain, but not much bigger either. A single torch lit the space, casting a soft orange glow on the maiden who slept on a thin mattress. The light seemed to ring her head almost like a queen's crown. She breathed deeply, reflecting the peacefulness of her sleep. She had thrown off her covers, and her thin frock outlined the lovely shape of her body, of her firm new breasts and thighs and petite waist. Her neck especially enticed, long and fair and perfect for sinking his teeth into. Ghirahim drew back from the door. Throwing himself on the bed, he uttered a spell to make sleep come as quickly as possible. And that is the end of Chapter 5 of Demon Queen. Thoughts, comments, questions?
I don't have any questions. I like to see that Kataki's now coming into herself a little bit more.
Yeah?
Yeah.
She has some purpose, some
purpose.
skill. She's good with art. She's good with memory. I mean, I wouldn't memorize those runes, you know.
No.
Probably so.
No. It's good to see that.
Yeah?
Yeah. Thought she was just going to be some little...
You're going to have to talk louder, and they're going to have to edit the entire ending, so talk louder. I'm not restarting the ending, so please just talk louder. And then...
It's just good to see her that way.
Yeah?
Not some kind of puppy just following him around.
Well, she's still a puppy,
I mean,
but...
she's still there.
Yeah, at least she has her own skills, her own, you know, ambitions and everything. Yeah, any other thoughts on this chapter?
No.
Yeah?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, that's that. So Kataki's now shown him this secret place of research. Hopefully, well, he's hoping, I don't know what we're hoping for as the readers, but he's hoping to, find a way to decipher the runes and open the portal and get his armies. What's your personal take? Are you rooting for Ghirahim
Nope.
being the main character?
Nope.
Are you rooting for anybody?
Sakura right now.
All right, well, that's fair. I think it's interesting to have a look from the perspective of a villain. I think that some people are going to root for him, and I think that some people aren't, and I think that that's okay. So, you know?
Yeah. It's hard for me to root for him. Oh, because I also played the game, so I know him.
You know him personally?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, well, that wraps up Chapter 5. We'll be doing Chapter 6 next week. On that note, happy reading with whatever you're reading. And if you really just can't wait to read the rest of this for yourself, if you can't wait for us to read it, again, I'll leave those links down below to where you can download it for free yourself to read. And happy reading. And I'll see you in my next video.
Goodbye.